like to call the House Education Finance Committee to order. Good morning, everybody. We have two bills up today, and our first order of business will be the minutes. Chair Clardy, Vice Chair Clardy, have you had a chance to look at the minutes?
Yes, I have.
And would you like to move the minutes for January 26th?
So moved.
Vice Chair Clardy's moved the minutes for the committee. Any question on the minutes? Oh, actually, it should be the 31st minutes. Sorry about that. I was looking down the minutes, reading the 26th from the previous meeting. So yes, thank you, Chair Clardy's moved the minutes for the January 31st before the committee. Any question? Thank you. See, it takes a village to run a meeting. It really does. Yes, Representative Altendorf.
Am I missing from that, the president? I mean, I think I am.
Oh, yes, we will note that Representative Altendorf in the minutes with a correction, that she was here. Thank you for checking that.
Because you were sitting.
Okay, Representative Anderson and Representative Altendorf will be marked present on the minutes for January 31st.
Oh, I'm not.
Thank you for looking. It looks like we just dropped the whole A's off. So, with that, with those corrections, any other corrections for the January 31st minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of the January 31st minutes as corrected, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The January 31st minutes are adopted as corrected. With that, members, I think we're going to move right on to House File 22, Representative Berg. We are just full of everything today, right? Representative Pryor, would you like to move House File 22 before the committee? Representative Pryor, would you like to move House File 22 before the committee?
Yes, so moved.
Thank you. House File 22 is before the committee, and the intention of the chair is to hear the bill and lay it over for possible inclusion in the education finance bill. So with that, Representative Berg, take it away.
Thank you, Chair Joachim, and thank you, committee members. I love education. I used to sit in education policy. I wish I was here again, but you're all doing great work. I do appreciate the opportunity to have House File 22 heard today. It is the EL bill, and this bill I've introduced every biennium, and so I'm hoping that this is the third time is the charm here. I do just want to acknowledge that there was a $2 million bump in 2001, and that was very helpful, but I think that was just such a tiny amount and that there's much that we need to do in this area. And so I hope that the committee considers the proposal today in front of you. I actually had a whole bunch of things prepared that I wanted to share with all of you today, but I think that in light of some of the new discoveries that I sort of came about as I was preparing this bill last night, I just want to really talk to why this issue matters and why we need to fund it, and maybe some proactively saying some things that I would like to see even different within my own bill. So I just want to share, I am an EL student. English is not my first language. I came to this country when I was 4 years old. And I shared this story the first biennium that I introduced this bill, and that I remember distinctly when I stopped dreaming in Hmong and I started dreaming in English. And I knew that that is when English became my first language. And at that time, I didn't really understand, when you're in middle school, you really don't know, like, what does that mean? Like, why are you dreaming now in a different language than you've been dreaming in before? But it was always something that stuck with me. And it wasn't until I had my own children who are two Hmong kids with Hmong last names, and I enrolled them into St. Paul Public Schools after living all over the country, in Baltimore, in Chicago, and coming back here. It was intentional on my part so that my kids would go to public schools. And I remembered my children, I wasn't told this, but had been coded as ELL. And it's not that I have any issues with how ELL is delivered or that they shouldn't be ELL students, but my children didn't speak any other language but English. And what I came to understand was that though no one ever admitted this was why, that it was really just because of the race of my children. And it took me years. My first one started second grade here in public schools. And every single year I was told she was taken off of ELL, but in high school, her senior year, she called me and said, "Mom, they're having me test out of ELL again." I said, "Don't take the test." She goes, "I already did, because I don't speak any other language but English, so I'm through with that." And the reason why this story matters so much to me is that there are a lot of things within our school districts. I love our teachers, I love public schools, and I am completely here for fully funding education. But I also believe that we have to, as we increase funding, look at accountability measures. And that as well-intentioned as the people who are around us who are educating our children, and as much as we ask of them to be teachers and therapists and counselors and parents to all of our kids and mental health providers, that we have to give them the resources, but we also have to be willing to look at the systems and see where it is that it is not serving our students. And that one of the first steps is to ensure that we fully fund education, but the other is to ensure that there is accountability so that when our children are getting the services that they need, one, that you don't give services to children who don't need it, because every single time we do that, a child who needs the services is not getting it. And two, that we make sure that our children who are needing these services, whether it's SPED or EL, that they're actually getting what they need in order to be successful. And, you know, I've heard too many stories about children in EL who graduate who actually are not proficient in reading or in English, and they want to go to college because that is every immigrant's dream. That was my parents' dream for me, is to come to this country and have a better life. And when we do not educate our children, they go to college and they're already from low-income communities, and they have to take a whole bunch of remedial classes that don't even count towards their major, with money they do not have to spend just to get them up to speed in order to start taking classes that will count towards their major. And so I was going to bring an amendment today to my own bill to sort of help address that accountability, but I'm going to hold off on that since I haven't given the committee ample time to actually, you know, understand what it is. But I just want the committee to be aware that I'm here to fully advocate for funding EL. In my bill, it is to increase the per pupil from $704 to $1,000, and then also to get rid of the cross subsidy in 4 years. But that I would like to continue to work with this committee in order for us to potentially create an amendment that will have some accountability measures to ensure that we do service our kiddos in the best way possible. That was not the intro I was planning for today, but that is the intro that you all got. I love this bill. I put this forward many years, and I hope that you all support it today. One last quick thing before I go into our testifiers is that I just want to be very clear that why this, you know, it's always been important, but it is all the more important now because after the pandemic, what we saw happen to our children, our EL students especially, as I was diving into the data, is we've really failed these students. One, they already, during the pandemic, they were unable to, with as much help from their teachers as possible in their districts, when you have language barriers at home and you can't navigate the system, you are not logging in to go to school, and then your parents don't have the ability to help you. And so what we saw was last year, I asked MDE to disaggregate the data for the AAPI community, and we saw that our Hmong and Karen students were only 15% proficient in math and 30% proficient in reading. There is a lot we need to do to get our EL students caught up, and we need to invest in and give teachers and school districts the resources they need in order to really catch these kiddos up. They're years behind now. We really need to help support them and catch them up. So with that, I am going to, Madam Chair, I've spoken for a really long time, so I would like to yield my time, the rest of the time, to the testifiers who took time out of their busy day to come today to testify.
Thank you, Representative Herr. Thank you for that. And the first up we have Dr. Joe Gothard from St. Paul, Superintendent from St. Paul Public Schools, and then Zena Stenvik, Superintendent from Columbia Heights, is on deck. So Representative Gothard is actually with us remotely. Dr. Gothard, would you, sorry, I demoted you to Representative. Dr. Gothard, will you please state your name for the record and proceed?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair, members. Thank you for this opportunity to testify for House File 22, a bill that funds EL services for the state of Minnesota. I am Joe Gothard, and I'm the Superintendent of St. Paul Public Schools. And before I continue, I just want to thank Representative Herr. Your story inspires and even more importantly motivates me to see our students, to see our families, and to not only make them feel welcome, but to make sure they know that they can thrive. And that is the expectation that I have on myself and that I hold our staff to. I believe knowledge imparts a duty to act. I believe that our actions speak louder than our words. Our actions reveal who we are. When we know that EL students are our fastest growing demographic in the state, and 95% of EL learners are students of color, and EL students are legally entitled to the services they need to thrive. But our actions reveal a willingness to chronically underfund services to EL students, and our inaction ignites a cannibalistic competition for resources for every school site in our state. Those facts say a lot about who we are and who we value. House File 22 offers an alternative value proposition. House File 22 imagines a world where the services that multilanguage learners deserve are not delivered at the expense of other learners or programs at school sites. Quite simply, House File 22 acts to amend the EL funding formulas that finance the full cost of delivering the services multilingual learners deserve within 4 years. House File 22 aligns with what we know to be true, what we need to do based on that knowledge. In St. Paul Public Schools, we measure long-term student outcomes, and SPPS achieves our strategic plan, and we point out the expectation that our EL learners will thrive. We're proud of our tradition of sending students to receiving EL services in our district and how we serve them. We lead the state of Minnesota in seals of biliteracy and opportunity to embrace who our students are and how they show up in our schools. We have had EL students graduate with a St. Paul Public Schools diploma and an associate's degree from a 2-year college. Fully funding the EL cross-subsidy will allow us support to ensure a thriving workforce with a global diversity that is reflected in the St. Paul Public Schools community and the multilingual communities around the state of Minnesota. Knowledge imparts a duty to act. Our actions speak louder than our words. House File 22 speaks volumes about what we know to be true. I urge the committee to act favorably on House File 22. Thank you for this opportunity to address the community and know that St. Paul Public Schools EL students and families will benefit from your great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gothard. Next up, we have Superintendent Stenvik from Columbia Heights. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Zena Stenvik. I'm the superintendent for Columbia Heights Public Schools, and I'm here this morning to address educational funding for English learners in K-12 Minnesota schools. My father, who was a World War II vet and born in 1922 up on the Iron Range, which is Legislative District 7B, only spoke his native Slovenian language until the mining companies at about age 8 brought in English teachers. So Minnesota has a very rich history of strong and diverse immigrant communities. In 1997, I worked as a bilingual homeschool liaison and educational assistant in the St. Paul Public Schools. Later, I became an EL teacher and eventually worked at the central office. During that time, we welcomed waves of new immigrants, such as the Hmong students from the Wat Tam Krabak refugee camp in Thailand, Somali refugees, and Karen students fleeing from Burma. We developed systematic methods for teaching students the English language through the different content areas so each student could reach grade level content in science, social studies, math, and of course the English language. We implemented widespread co-teaching models so that EL students could access their mainstream peers and not be taught in isolated classrooms. In 2006, I was asked to consult with Columbia Heights Public Schools, and they eventually hired me in 2008 to be their EL coordinator, and it was amazing. We had, at our elementary schools, 1 EL teacher per grade level. They were able to co-teach in the literacy block and support other content areas. Our EL students excelled and progressed in their studies. Our immigrant families were supported by teachers, liaisons, and interpreters. It was a model program. But since that time, the funding has not kept pace, and we are now faced with an ever-growing English learner cross-subsidy. I don't know if any of you have traveled to another country or have been immersed in a different culture, but I'm sure you do have a clear understanding of why our EL families make the often dangerous and difficult journey to the United States of America and this great state of Minnesota. The parents of my students are just like any of us. They're hardworking and they want the very best for their children, and so do I. Pero muchas veces vienen con muy pocos recursos y sin saber cómo navegar el sistema educativo. Toditos de los padres tienen las ganas de hacer lo que pueden hacer por el bienestar de sus hijos. So if you weren't able to understand those remarks, it's just a little taste of what our children experience each and every day. Over the years in Columbia Heights, we've welcomed refugees from Iraq, Syria, and recently Afghanistan. This year, you may be aware of what is taking place at our southern border. In Columbia Heights, we have enrolled over 400 children from Ecuador since September, and we only have 3,000 students in our whole district. Unfortunately, the funding for the required and mandated English learner programs, such as Federal Title III and the state Minnesota LEAPS Act, has not kept up with inflation and has not kept pace with the needs of our students. Therefore, we have had to cut EL staff despite the dramatic increase in EL students. At this time, over 50% of our students at Valley View Elementary School qualify for EL services. Over 1/3 of our student population in the district are EL students. We no longer have 1 EL teacher per grade level. In fact, at North Park School for Innovation, we only have 2 EL teachers to service all of the grade levels, pre-K through 5th grade. If I may speak on behalf of our Columbia Heights High School teachers who have 44 English level, EL level 1 newcomer students in their classrooms, they just want to do what's right, but it's overwhelming to do their job properly without the proper resources. So as the daughter of an English learner himself and an educator to thousands of English learners, I urge the committee to pass House File 22 and fully fund the English learner cross subsidy over the next 4 years. Thank you, Representative Herr, and I want to thank you for your time, Madam Chair, members.
Thank you so much, Superintendent. Next up, we have Eugenia Popa, a teacher at Harding High School. Then Abbas Fahim is going to be next. Eugenia is actually remote, so please just state your name for the record and proceed.
Hello. Can you
Good
hear me?
morning.
Good morning. Hello, Madam Chair and members. My name is Eugenia Popa. I'm a National Board Certified ESL teacher at Harding High Senior School in St. Paul and a 2 times finalist for the Minnesota Teacher of the Year Award. I'm here with one of my students, Abbas Fahim, and we are both testifying in support of House File 22. We would like to thank Representative Herr for authoring the bill, which increases EL funding over 4 years to meet the actual cost of delivering the services we provide to the increasing numbers of second language learners in our state. In my school, English learners make up about 1/3, 34% of our student body, and about 15% of them are language academy students, a term used for recent immigrants with limited or no English language skills. Many of them are refugees, born and raised in camps as they had to escape war or persecution in their home countries. Others come from poverty-stricken areas where they had limited or no educational opportunities. Due to the missed years of formal schooling, they are often not literate in their first language. We also service long-term ELs, second or third generation immigrants who are struggling with academic English. Statistically, EL students have lower GPAs, lower standardized test scores, lower high school graduation rates, and lower enrollment in advanced placement courses, and are at greater risk for dropout, 25% compared to 15% for non-ELs. If we want to close the achievement gap, we need to do better by them. Besides differentiated academic and linguistic support, all these students need sustained social, emotional, and navigational guidance in our schools. And that takes a whole village. From EL and content teachers to administrators, counselors, social workers, psychologists, and bilingual staff who can provide a welcoming and nurturing environment for these students and their families. All are important and necessary resources to educate the EL students in our state. Specific materials and curriculum, as well as adequate training to all staff, are also needed. Yes, it all comes with a price tag, but with the large numbers of immigrants in our state, it is imperative that we invest this money in our children, in our future. Like many of my EL students, I'm a first-generation immigrant, so I can relate to the struggles of adapting to a new culture. Unlike them, when I arrived from my home country, Romania, I had a college education and strong English language skills. And it was still hard to find my place in the new country. As an ESL teacher, I listen to and marvel at my students' stories and past experiences. They come with different ways of thinking and learning, with unique skills and knowledge, an incredible potential that must be recognized and nurtured towards academic growth and lifelong success. EL students are an asset to our state, and we need to commit all necessary resources to discover and grow this potential that our state will benefit from in the future.
Thank
We
you.
welcome Minnesota into our schools, and we cannot leave them behind.
Thank
I
you.
rise in-
Sorry, we are on a tight timeline. I just want to, if you can wrap up your comments so that we can hear from Abbas Fahim, your student as well.
So I just rise in support of House File 22 and urge you to vote for increasing EL funding in our state. Thank you for your attention to this very important matter.
Hello, welcome. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Hello, my name is Abbas Fahim, and I'm a senior at Harding High School. I'm from Afghanistan, and I immigrated to the United States in 2016. My father worked with the U.S. military, and we got a special visa to come to the United States. When I arrived here, I did not speak any English, not even the basics. It was hard for me to learn English, and 2 years of hard work to be able to understand and speak English. There weren't any other Afghan students in my school at that time. So I had to learn how to communicate in English with my teachers and other students. Many people helped me individually, especially teachers, teacher assistants, and student teachers. Thanks to their help, I eventually get out of EL classes, and I even took some advanced classes. I will graduate this year, and I am planning to go to college. I have been accepted to all colleges that I applied for. I will be first one in my family to graduate from high school and go to college. A huge number of Afghan people came to Minnesota in 2021, and most of them do not speak English. There are a few of them at Harding, and I help translate for them whenever they need to communicate with other people. We have many kids from all over the world who came for a better life in Minnesota. Schools are their first and maybe the only place they can get help. Learning English takes time and resources. I'm thankful for the support I got when I came to Harding. I encourage you to vote for this bill so other kids can get help they need. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on graduation and getting accepted to college, and we wish you the very best. Next up, we have Tara Buchanvizani from the University of Minnesota, and I'm so sorry, I probably butchered your name. Please, is she remote or, oh, thank you. Please come up and state your name for the record properly, because I know I probably said it wrong, and proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Tara Bunkelvisan. I am a graduate student at the University of Minnesota studying school psychology, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to testify in favor of House File 22 and to share my experience with you all. ELL programs are extremely important for kids of immigrant families specifically. Coming from a family that does not speak English as their first language, school is where they develop this language and skills to help them progress for the rest of their lives. Right now, without the proper funding, these programs cannot function in the way they need to. Teachers currently lack the support to refer their students to these programs, and oftentimes kids are incorrectly referred past these programs and into special education programs. Because of the complete lack of funding for ELL resources and assessments, kids without learning disabilities are put in special education programs, which put them further behind in school as they are not receiving the correct guidance and assistance they need. In kindergarten, I was told I would need to be placed in the ELL program at my school in Chanhassen. My parents fought this decision due to the inaccurate connotation that kids in this program were lacking in academic progress. This negative connotation comes from the fact that these programs are systematically designed incorrectly. The kids that partake in these programs are not assessed in meaningful ways and are not properly helped to reintegrate back into the normal education track. With adequate funding, these programs will be able to hire professionals who have studied techniques that help young students, like myself, to excel in school early on. Schools and teachers will be able to refer students to these programs with less pushback from parents, knowing that it will not hold their kids back in the long run. Members of the committee, I urge you to vote in favor of House File 22 today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we have Jeff Elstad, Superintendent, 761, and then up on deck would be Karen Balaz. from LEAD, but the Superintendent Elstad is online, so please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Chair Joachim and members of the committee, and a special thank you to Representative Herr for her advocacy around this particular item. I'm Jeff Elstad, the proud superintendent for the Owatonna Public Schools, and today I'm representing the outstate or greater Minnesota districts that are absolutely in sweeping support of this bill. As I think about how this impacts our students, over the past 3 years, we have seen a vast increase in the number of students that are coming new to country or to our programs. In fact, we see annual growth now in the last 3 years of 7 to 10% of 7 to 10% of growth on the number of students receiving EL services. I also want you to know that in Owatonna, even though we are in Greater Minnesota, we have 17 different languages spoken in our school district. We recently, or actually not so recently, but in the last 20 to 30 years, have seen a significant growth, particularly in our East African population, namely Somali and Sudan. Within this, when you think about dollars and cents and what the cross subsidy would help us with, or that aid, currently we have about $1 million of our general fund that's used to cross subsidize or subsidize our EL programming. Although in 2001 we saw a minimal increase, certainly with the influx of new students and families coming to join us, this would be important financial boost for our community and certainly our school district. I would also add that this has a significant impact on the job growth that we are seeing in our community and certainly communities around me in southern Minnesota. For our regional economy, we need students that are prepared. And I believe that the EL instruction that our students and our adult basic education students receive helps to really fuel and provide for that need for workers that we have and so direly need in southern Minnesota. And so I urge you to consider strongly to support House File 22. Again, I want to thank Representative Herr, and as a side note, I want to congratulate Abbas for reminding us all of the magic of public education and what EL services can do for our students. And again, I wish that, and I hope that you would strongly consider supporting this particular bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Elstad. Next up, we have Karen Velez-Barron, Latino Lead. Please state your name for the record, and then you may proceed.
Buenos dias, and Karen was not able to be here, so I will be testifying. My name is Irma Marquez Trapero, and I'm the Executive Director of Latino Lead. And dear Madam Chair Joachim and members of the House Education Committee, I am the Executive Director of Latino Lead, a nonprofit that focuses on advocacy and leadership development for Latinos in Minnesota. Thank you so much for the opportunity in support of House File 22 to increase funding for English language learning programming and accountability. This funding increase that also connects to best practices are long overdue. There are 76,361 students, or roughly 8.5% identified as English language learners. A large proportion of ELs are attending elementary school. This creates an opportunity and challenge for parents, educators, and education system because the time window for developing complete language fluency is short. It takes roughly 5 years for a child to become fluent in a second language, and struggling EL learners could face devastating consequences when they receive inadequate education, which we have heard time and time and again in this hearing. Young students may face failure in schools, early dropout, and really truly a lack of opportunities that all of us truly deserve. We support increasing funding to ELL students, and I also want to encourage all of us to do more. In order for our students to succeed, I urge that we incorporate specific language into the bill to ensure these funding resources are used for quality EL instruction, support of teachers and school administrators, and effective practices that will help our students succeed academically. Minnesota, thankfully, has developed a strong policy that clearly defines these practices. They are included in the Learning English for Academic Proficiency and Success LEAPS Act, which became Minnesota law in 2014. You see, we have a guide and infrastructure to ensure that learning and support are happening at the same time within this act. Experts in the field of education developed this policy, and it has been widely recognized as some of the best in the country. But unfortunately, it is underfunded. The legislation often increases funding for education without measures on accountability, and we continue to have the same results. We have some of the largest disparities in the country here in Minnesota. It is time to do something different. We believe that we have the responsibility to partner, support, and ask school districts to do more for our EL students and families. We represent parents, teachers, educators, businesses, and diverse voices that strongly support full funding for public education, but Minnesota needs to do something more to address the educational gaps that exist in our state. I myself am a proud ELL kid, once ELL, always ELL, from rural Minnesota, St. James, a small town 2 hours south of here, where I grew up. I was one of the few Latinx families in the district, and therefore, my ELL teacher had what I assume at that time, a small caseload. Mrs. Bradley was an amazing teacher, and within a few years, I was able to graduate. It was also around this time where St. James saw a major incoming wave of new residents, mostly immigrants from Mexico and Central America. Although the need for ELL support increased, the funding didn't. In the following years, I witnessed ELL classrooms, what for me were a center of safety and a lot of education and support, to really like study halls. Teachers were at capacity, and there was no accountability to ensure that teachers were ultimately having students learn English. The lack of a capacity of the district and lack of accountability create a recipe where neither students or educators are able to succeed. We must include clear metrics to ensure we know what both educators and students need to ensure the best and highest quality of education is being delivered. The LEAPS Act was passed in 2014 to add and increase emphasis on ELL support. It adds a definition and accountability
Excuse me,
reporting.
I'm sorry. Could you wrap up? I've given you more than 4 minutes, and we have another bill up. So-
For sure,
so
thank you. So lastly, I just want to applaud Representative Hurd for your efforts to increase ELL funding and encourage that this legislation will connect the funding to best practices and measures of accountability. Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Gracias.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Last up, we have Paula Cole, Educators for Excellence, and she's remote. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Paula Cole. I'm here to testify in support of House File 21. I'm very grateful to you, Chair Joachim, members of the committee, and guests for this opportunity to testify. As stated, I am the Executive Director for Educators for Excellence Minnesota. Over here, we offer direct advocacy and organizing training to our members who are educators fighting for education equity in our state. In this process, we help them elevate their voices wherever education policies are discussed. We are 2,300 members strong. 2/3 of our members are proud Education Minnesota members. The other third are highly engaged teachers at public charter schools. I am a former English learner, as you can tell. I am a parent. I've also spent 7 years teaching and coaching my colleagues at Minneapolis Public Schools. I also chair the Richfield Board of Education, a district where 70% of our kids are BIPOC, 42% are English learners, and we are proud to celebrate that in the past 3 years, twice we have graduated our class with no achievement gaps based on race. We still have work to do with English learners so that they can achieve the same success, and this is why I'm also here. I believe I'm very optimistic that this body, this committee cares about public education. You care about students. You, especially below the Representative Hurd, thank you so much for bringing this courageous bill forward. One more time, I feel that this may be the year that we can get this done. And that said, in order to continue this line of funding, we need to make sure that the funding right now can be successful so that we can keep showing how it worked. And that will not be done alone with a formula increase. And this is why now I want to pivot a little bit, asking this body to incorporate a specific language into this bill to ensure that these funding sources are used for ELL instruction and practices that are scientifically proven to get the job done, such as the practices and directions included in the Learning English for Academic Proficiency and Success, the LEAPS Act. This was an act that was passed in Minnesota in 2014 to add an increased emphasis on English learning support. This law is already embedded into many existing statutes about education. It has a definition and accountability reporting for students with limited interrupted formal education. It also adds a provision for districts to institute bilingual and multilingual seals on high school diplomas for students who demonstrate certain levels of language proficiency in native and world languages. As a former teacher and English language learner, I can tell you that the wrong curriculum can hinder students' chances to become fluent English speakers. And this is why I just really want to ask you from the heart that you, of course, support this bill and this formula increases, but also please consider adding some changes so that we can add the accountability piece. And I encourage you to look into the LEAPS Act to support with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Board Chair Cole. With that, members, we have some time for questions. Representative Jordan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Representative Herr, for bringing this bill up. My mom is a career EL teacher, and so it's always been a big part of, even though, you know, I grew up speaking English, it's always felt like an EL family because of the community that our EL families create for our entire communities. But I'm wondering if maybe, I'm sorry to pick on you, Ms. Parra, can you walk through this spreadsheet on the district runs and maybe talk a little bit about what each column means?
Ms. Parra?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Jordan. I will be a poor substitute for Mr. Strom, but I will do my best. Okay, so on the district number, district name, then fiscal year 24 adjusted pupil units for each district, and then there's a separate column next to that for English learners, and then you can see the percentage, you know, what that comes to. There's the EL basic revenue and then the concentration revenue, because it's a concentration formula under the bill. If there's what the district or what each stratum would get with the extra $2 million per year, and you can see that as the percent of English learner varies by district, that would vary as well. You have the change in the bill. Let's see, the columns that start with House File 22. Those really are the ones that show you the change, and you can see then how those would affect each one by region, and then by individual district. I don't know if that's helpful.
Representative Jordan?
It's very helpful, thank you.
Representative Herr?
And I thank you, Representative Jordan, for asking to look through this, because what I want to highlight is last night, because I got this in a PDF, I went through and counted everything. And maybe my count is a little off, but there were 524 districts, because this also includes charter schools as well, but that 356 of them will receive additional EL funding under this proposed formula in House File 22, and that's 67.9% of the districts across the state that would see an increase in funding. And I just wanted to point out that, you know, I think sometimes the perception is that EL is an issue in the metro city areas. And if you look at some of the greatest increases of those who would benefit the most are some of our smaller school districts. So Worthington has a 27.7% EL population. Pelican Rapids, and I'm not even sure where that is, but that's a 21.1%. And their student body is only 936. So I think it's really important to see why this is a statewide issue and why it is important. Wyndham has 17.2% EL students, and their whole pupil, the students is 1,277. They have 198 EL students. So for us to remember that actually our rural Minnesota benefits greatly from this particular EL change in funding.
Thank you, Representative Herr. Representative Bennett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we heard a number of the testifiers ask for more accountability measures in this bill and the language. So I guess my question is, what accountability measures are in here? And do they measure not just input, like how much money we're putting in, but output as into the effectiveness of English language proficiency, how long it takes to get a student, how many years up to par and so on?
Representative Hurd.
Thank you, Chair Joachim, and thank you, Representative Bennett, for that question. It's a really good question. Right now, the way the bill is written, it's really difficult, and I've talked to research in a number of school districts around, like, how do you create accountability when each school district's EL population actually looks very different? As you all saw today, the diversity in EL students is actually quite great, from European, Eastern European to our Latinx community to Southeast Asian, and so it's really big. And so this is actually quite a complex issue, which is why we don't have something yet. But I've actually got commitment from Chair Joachim and also research that we will actually really dive into this and see how we can actually improve on this bill before it gets before we get to the end of session, because that is really important. And also that whether somebody's literate in their language, like I'm not literate in my first language. So, like whether somebody came here literate in their own language, or whether, they have some kind of formal education in their own country, like it all actually impacts the EL learning here in this country and what that looks like. And school districts are tasked with really, really tough task of like really saying, how do we meet EL students where they are? And that's why we do need to fully fund EL so that they can create nuanced approaches, but then we can also give them what we would hopefully work on is something that gives them a guideline of what are the measures that we need to put in place for the input of students coming in, but also our students achieving where we want them to. So I appreciate that question, and there is much work we need to do around that.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Hurd. Representative Bennett, follow.
Thank you. Just a quick comment, and thank you for that, Representative Hurd. I think it's extremely important. I mean, it sounds like my classroom. I had so many different varying levels of students, different language speakers, different backgrounds, poverty levels, and so on. But we can measure growth no matter what. And so that really needs to be in here. This is, equivalent to more than way more than a 2% increase on the per pupil formula each year. We need to have accountability measures in here that measure growth. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Representative Perez-Vega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Hurd, as a youth worker in school and after-school programming throughout not just the metro, but even in greater Minnesota's Faribault, looking at 30% of EL students, I look at $1,000 being so low of an ask. And I'm excited to see the growth of percentages in each fiscal year because our classrooms are growing with EL students. It has been, and the diversity of the languages just from our Southeast Asian community. Folks can't just put them all in one box, so it's really great to see this, and I look forward to supporting this. It's so important coming from a Spanish-speaking home. EL is our champion so that we can be in these spaces and help those kids that need help. Gracias.
Thank you, Representative. Next up, Representative Grisha.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Hurd, for bringing this up. To non-partisan research, how is the EL cross-subsidy calculated? Is it similar to the SPED cross-subsidy?
Ms. Para.
I'm sorry, Representative Grisha, I don't think I can answer that question.
Okay.
Well, we could follow up with you after committee.
That'd be great.
Thank you, Ms. Para. Representative Grisha, follow up.
And just quickly, I just want to thank Representative Hurd for recognizing there's room for accountability, and especially when we target services and kids in need of services. So I appreciate bringing that forward, and I hope that we can continue that through as a theme for the committee.
Thank you, Representative Grisha. With that, Representative Hurd, final word.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee, for giving us the opportunity to really talk through this issue. I just want to share, I think that some of our testifiers already talked to this, but we have seen a 200% increase in the last 20 years of our EL learners. And the most recent census data indicates that this population will just continue to grow. And the truth is as Minnesotans, we want that population to grow. We do not have enough workers in our economy right now in order to keep us at the level of services that we want. And so we want to make sure that we are welcoming our EL families and educating our students properly. My family was able to break the cycle of poverty in one generation because of our ability to access good public education and the ability to actually learn and have the services we needed. And so I think I might have mentioned this before to all of you, but in my family, I was the not smart one, so I went into business. All of my other siblings are engineers, but we all benefited from the same system, and I think that every immigrant family should have the same opportunity to do so. I will just point out really quick that one of the most common findings that the U.S. Department of Justice or the DOJ and the Office of Civil Rights have when they review state and district EL programs is the failure to sufficiently staff and support the language assistance programs for EL students. And truthfully, not only is this just in itself really surprising to see and to know how hard everybody's working, but we're still falling short, that we do need to give investments into this area because not only do our families and really continuing the tradition of being a state that welcomes immigrants and welcomes those who we see as an asset versus a deficit, that they are the ones who are going to actually fill that need for us, and that we can't do that without properly funded EL education. So thank you all so much for the opportunity to present the bill and to have it heard, and I look forward to working on all of you on the pieces we've discussed today.
Thank you so much, Representative Kerr. Next up, we have, oh, sorry. First, we have to, boy, it feels like a Monday. I'll renew the motion that Representative Pryor had that we lay this bill over for possible inclusion in an education finance bill. With that, we will move on to House File 8. Representative Berg, welcome back to the committee. Would Representative Pryor like to move House File 8 before the committee?
So moved.
We have House File 8 before us, and Representative Berg, I understand you also have an A1 amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Pryor, would you like to move the A1 amendment?
So moved.
Representative Pryor moves the A1 amendment. Representative Berg, would you like to speak to the A1 amendment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment increases the funding to schools to approximately $250 million a year, incorporates language from school social workers asking to maintain positions that were hired with temporary CARES Act funding, or to move a partial FTE up to a full-time position, adds back the school nurse position at MDE, adds the workforce language from last year, and incorporates additional language school psychologists requested for workforce growth, makes the workforce funding ongoing, adds a requirement in the application to MDE that districts list what their current roster of FTEs in these fields are to ensure equity among positions.
Thank you, Representative Berg. That's the A1 amendment before us. Anybody have any questions on the A1 amendment? Seeing none, all those for the A1 amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The A1 amendment is adopted. Representative Berg, continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to note quickly that I have permission to share this story with you all today. My youngest son was a sweet, sunny, kind, and curious little towhead boy. His teachers often commented that he was so kind to the other kids in his class, always checking on a classmate who seemed to be having a hard day or seemed sad. He had an indelible smile, until he didn't. In third grade, he was diagnosed with ADD, and that is when I began to see the sparkle in his eyes grow dimmer and dimmer. I could see that he quickly learned that he struggled to do what the other students seemed to do so easily. I could see how much this daily realization affected his self-esteem, the frustration, anxiety, confusion, and shame. It was a shame that first broke my heart, and it's his anxiety that nearly breaks me still today. He was a quiet kid who didn't call attention to himself. He had a brilliant and inquisitive mind that nobody could see or foster. He just sat lost in his own head. I tried everything. I changed his diet. I researched best practices. I helped as much as I could with his studies as a working mom, and I felt powerless. We were distressed to find that there were only part-time school counselors in his elementary school, divided between several campuses and only available a couple of times a week. By the time we came up with a plan for Jake, he was off to middle school, but none of his information followed him, so we started all over again, and again without enough student support staff to help us. So he sat in his classes, went largely unnoticed, and the very best things about my son were lost on almost everyone around him. Now, dear listeners, we're off to high school, but this is where the story takes a turn.
Upon his arrival in high school, we once again found that none of his information or plans followed him. However, this time we found an ally when we finally had access to a full-time on-site school counselor. We now had a partner in advocacy and someone to guide us towards building Jake's future, which I had never questioned was and still is bright. By then, he had fallen so far behind in his credits that success looked unattainable. But his school counselor, Mr. Hendricks, pointed me towards another option. And this is where Jake's life changed. I was told about the Alternative Learning Center in Burnsville, but the program was almost full. So, acknowledging my privilege as a mom who could walk into that building in the middle of the day and demand to see the dean and say that I was not leaving until I did, I was able to get Jake into the alternative learning courses, and that made a huge difference, a difference I never would have known about if it hadn't been for his school counselor. I never thought for even a moment that the teachers and support staff didn't care about my son. They were working within a broken and overburdened system that has left teachers and support personnel at wit's end. When I was at the doors this election cycle, I spoke to so many teachers and school staff that broke down in tears, not knowing how to make things better for the students they care so much about. I spoke to a school counselor in another district who had 1,000 students assigned to just her. The ratio is supposed to be 250 students per counselor, which still seems overwhelming. These are fields that we are struggling to recruit new participants into. There is little incentive to enter a job where we are at a nearly crisis level with burnout, lack of resources, and not enough support personnel to help carry the heavy load of reaching every student in need. Spoiler alert, it's every student. Our students need more supports: mental health, physical health, and social emotional supports. This bill would provide ongoing sustainable funding to every school district and charter school in Minnesota to allow schools to prioritize these supports. Districts would receive dedicated funding, at least $50,000, to hire a school nurse, school counselor, chemical dependency counselor, social worker, and/or psychologist. Minnesota has 6,000 fewer school counselors, school social workers, school nurses, and school psychologists than necessary to meet the needs of our students. We know student support personnel close opportunity gaps. School social workers provide children in need with access to transportation, academic supports, counseling, basic nutrition, and in some cases, they help students find housing. School nurses are often the only medical professionals a student will see for months. Nurses educate students on allergies, mental health, hygiene, and emotional regulation. School counselors and psychologists provide education on a social-emotional learning through a racial justice lens. In my districts, families are asking for more school counselors. Some schools might need more social workers or nurses to meet the increasingly complex medical needs of our students. This bill provides local control to hire the student support personnel most needed in their community. Madam Chair, I have several testifiers with me today.
Thank you, Representative Berg. Why don't we start out with, just lost my page here, sorry about that. Nicole Woodward, Director of Special Ed and St. Croix River Education District. Next up will be Keela Poolers, and then Emily Goodhue. Please come on up, state your name for the record, and proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Nicole Woodward, and I am a licensed school psychologist and school administrator currently serving as the Director of Special Education for the St. Croix River Education District, also known as SCRED. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this morning to testify to all of you on the significant issue of student support personnel shortages in Minnesota. The St. Croix River Education District is proud to serve 6 school districts in East Central Minnesota. SCRED is known as a progressive organization that has historically attracted a healthy amount of school psychologist candidates because of the dynamic and foundational role that they play in providing innovative services to our member districts. Having been a school psychology intern at SCRED myself, I learned early on that there are few better places to learn, serve, and grow. SCRED has long realized that school psychologists are critical players to the implementation of evidence-based frameworks like a multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS. trained in organizational principles that align with effective schools. Our school psychologists are critical players in multi-layered instruction, assessment, database decision-making, engaging families, and supporting students. Without school psychologists, we would not be able to take on a framework like MTSS, and the needs of many students would not be identified until they are already struggling significantly. Due to budget constraints, our districts have had to reduce school psychology positions or maintain insufficient staffing levels. In addition, we have seen an alarming decline in the candidate pool for school psychologists coming into the field. Currently in our system, we have 3 open positions and 1 applicant at what we consider to be the height of our hiring season. 2 of these positions have carried over from openings last year that we had to fill with telehealth school psychologists. And while those school psychologists are incredible professionals who are doing great work, not having in-person school psychologists has significantly impacted our system. One teacher stating to me that the school psychologist serves as a bridge between different aspects of the system, and without that on site, large gaps now exist for both students and teachers. This story is not unique to Scred, and many of my colleagues across the state would echo the same sentiments with positions that have been left unfilled and needs left unmet. In one of my rural districts, we have an incredible school psychologist who serves the entire district, early childhood through age 21, with a student to staff ratio of 1 to 1,000. This is twice the ratio recommended by the National Association of School Psychologists. And she is significantly limited in her ability to support evidence-based practices that benefit all students, as she must focus almost exclusively on special education and legally mandated tasks. This staffing level ultimately impacts students, teachers, and teams across the whole system, including families and the community. If this district had additional aid, as in House File 8, to fund more student support personnel, it could open many new doors of opportunity for this district. At present, there are only 3 school psychology graduate programs in the state of Minnesota. The educators who graduate from these programs hold expertise that is extremely valuable and could benefit schools across our state. However, we are not producing nearly enough of these professionals to meaningfully address our shortages. If we truly want to meet the need of every student and family in Minnesota, we have to commit to significant support for school psychologists workforce pipeline and to address shortages not only for school psychologists, but nurses, counselors, and social workers as well. We have the opportunity to become a state where every student receives an equitable, high-quality education, but if we want to pursue that reality, we have to commit meaningfully to addressing these shortages. There's no way around the issue, and we are feeling it more and more with each passing school year. Thank you for the opportunity to share my experience in support of this crucial legislation. I urge the committee to pass House File 8.
Thank you so much. We have Keela Coolers next up, and then Emily Goodhue. Go ahead and state your name for the record and proceed.
Madam Chair, members, my name is Keela Coolers. I am the 2022 Minnesota School Counselor of the Year and Vice President of the Minnesota School Counselor Association. Today, I hope to expand your understanding of how essential elementary school counselors are in the complete equation of student mental health. To be straight to the point, only half of Minnesota's schools in 2021 had a school counselor in the building. School counselors are almost completely absent at the elementary level, and that is not because there's a lack of need. These schools are operating with an incomplete system to address student mental health. In some scenarios, it is completely reactive system. Others, they rely on classroom teachers who are not trained in mental health and already managing so much. Elementary school counselors bring unique training and services to schools that create complete equations to support student mental health from a comprehensive approach. One of the ways elementary school counselors are unique is that we proactively teach standards-based classroom lessons. At my school, we teach in the classroom for over 500 students every week. In fact, about a third of my time is spent teaching in the classroom. In these lessons, we cover a wide scope of social, emotional, and interpersonal skills. For example, we explore calming tools that help us on the bus, the lunchroom, at recess, in the classroom, during a test, or at home. And we practice and practice so those strategies are available to us when we need them. Students that can de-escalate more quickly increase their ability to focus on instruction and are better able to engage in learning tasks and challenges. And while I genuinely love my job and working with so many young brains every day, there are many present challenges. Simply put, the current state of need is just so great. Every day, and in the continual shockwaves of the COVID pandemic, I am placed in positions to have to prioritize working on multiple situations that need vastly more time that is available in the day. And I know many of my state colleagues across all levels share in that sentiment. Our National School Counseling Association has best practice recommendations, as mentioned, as 1 to 250 students. Minnesota in 2021 was over double that, averaging 1 to every 570 students, the fourth worst in the nation, the fourth worst. Ratios matter. Ratios make a difference for the lasting mental health of our students. And just as the state of student mental health is in need of significant change, the school counseling profession in Minnesota is also needing support at the state level. To name the problem, there's currently no school counselor representation at the Minnesota Department of Education. This is to the detriment of counselors practicing the state, as well as the fine work happening within the department, as I've illustrated already how integral counselors are in school communities. I hope you see from my testimony today with the unique preventative work that school counselors bring when they are part of the school's complete equation to support student mental health. Students are empowered with tools to recognize and respond to their emotions in a healthy way, and they are better equipped with the needed mindsets and behaviors to take on learning challenges. Minnesota students deserve access to a school counselor from the start of their education. School counselors deserve to be lifted up and supported by the state as they work towards mental health for our students. I genuinely thank you for your time today, and I ask you to support House File 8.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we have Emily Goodhue and then Lila Heine. Thank you. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
All right. Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Emily Goodhue. I am a member of the Minnesota School Social Workers Association and a school social worker in Minneapolis Public School District. Your introduction of this bill really struck my feeling of overwhelm and sadness for our students. So I'm going to try to get through this without crying. My message to this committee is that students cannot learn if their mental health and physical needs are unmet. We support HF 8 because it ensures access to vital resources that will support our students' physical and mental health. As school social workers, we dedicate ourselves to supporting healthy environments for our students. Research has proven that school social work interventions are effective in helping young people obtain the necessary skills to solve problems, improve their peer relations, and increase their academic achievement. This bill invests in school-employed support personnel like school social workers, nurses, psychologists, counselors, and chemical health counselors. While we are unique disciplines, together we form an essential team in each school, and we come to you today with one voice. This bill will provide essential resources to schools who are struggling to meet complex and increased student needs of today. And as Representative Berg noted, we are really struggling. And it is pretty heartbreaking to not be able to sufficiently support our children. School social workers across the state are providing crisis management services to students. In the 4 months since I started at my school, we have had 3 students lose immediate family members, and I have conducted suicide risk assessments for students younger than 11. We have students who come to school in tears because they don't know where their family will be living. And we have others who miss multiple days of school because their family's housing is so unstable. This is all in a school of only 225 kids. HF 8 offers 2 key components. One is an investment in school-employed student support personnel that allows funding to be used for new full-time positions, to move a part-time position to full-time, and to ensure that the positions funded by the American Rescue Plan, which are so important, are sustained after that funding stream ends. The second component addresses workforce shortages that impact all of our professions. Investing now in our children, schools, and mental health workforce is an investment in their healing, recovery, and ability to learn. And they really need it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony and for sharing your experience. Next up, we have Lila Henry, and then finally Tara Cliff. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and all committee members for this opportunity to testify in support of House File 8. I am honored to be able to support this bill. My name is Lila Heine. I am currently a junior at Roseville Area High School, and earlier this year I was officially diagnosed with anxiety, though it was something I've struggled with for a long time. I didn't know who to talk to or what I should do to help with how I was feeling, but thankfully I was privileged enough to have access to doctors and a therapist. I know many are not as lucky as I am, though. Over the years, I have made many friends and encountered many people who have been through more than I could ever comprehend. I've witnessed the most caring people suffer through mental struggles that they couldn't or were too scared to get help with. I've had close friends tell me they wished they weren't here anymore, or that they hate themselves so much that they can't look in the mirror. I've talked to and tried to provide love and support to so many friends who are struggling with their mental health. But after seeking support for myself, I now know that nothing can ever compare to professional help. Helping students with their mental health is not the job of a teenager or even a teacher. This is the job of a trained professional who can give my friends what they really need. It's important that these resources are accessible to all, and there's such an enormous need. Something that I know my school and I take pride in is our staff. We have a team of amazing psychologists, counselors, behavioral interventionalists, teachers, and many more. But our school social workers, school psychologists, and counselors are simply understaffed, with many students having to wait for the help that they need. It's important that we provide schools with the opportunity to invest in people that support our students outside of our classes. School can take a lot out of a person, and teenage years are more complicated now than ever before. And when students' bodies and minds are healthy, we can really focus all our energy on learning and school. To be successful in school, it is not only do we need great teachers and paraprofessionals, but the student support personnel that also help us in many ways. Please take into consideration students like me when making decisions, and please provide the needed support and funding for the whole student. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony and coming up here and helping ground us in the experience of our students. Next up, we have Tara Cliff. And she is remote, so please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Tara Cliff, President of the School Nurse Organization of Minnesota, or SNOM. We represent licensed school nurses, or LSNs, working in school districts across the state. SNOM thanks Representative Berg for House File 8. Our current Minnesota law, established in 1986, requires an LSN only if there are 1,000 or more students in a district. So whether a district has 1,000 or 10,000 students, they're only required to employ one LSN. In other words, if a district has 999 or fewer students, there is no requirement to employ a licensed school nurse. We must change this. All students should have access to school health services. We believe approximately 2/3 of Minnesota schools do not have an LSN in their school, and the ratio of students to LSN is approximately 1 to 1,400. But that number is not based on full-time equivalency. However, this number isn't fully known as the data is not being tracked by MDE at this point. As an example, one rural district has over 1,600 students. The LSN has over 14 schools with 10 locations across the district. Each day, she is called to these locations for immediate and necessary medical attention to students. The student health situation has become critical. Because of advances in medical treatment, children who would not have survived are now thankfully living and attending school, but often with significant health issues. Our nurses help students from preschool to high school plus with asthma, seizure disorders, severe depression and mental health issues, life-threatening allergies, tracheostomies, gastric tubes, just to name a few. Our nurses have countless stories about the student lives that they have saved because an LSN who is properly trained to be able to spot a medical or mental health emergency that an untrained person would not have been able to identify. This results in saving lives or catching the situation before it becomes a lifelong medical problem. A school nurse may be the only source of healthcare for some students. They may not have insurance or reliable transportation, or they can't afford medical care. Many health offices are staffed with secretaries and health aides who only have basic first aid and CPR training. We would love to work with any legislator who would help us improve this situation. Healthy students are better learners, and every student deserves a school nurse. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Members, we're done with testifiers, so I wanted to open this up to questions from folks. Representative Perez Vega.
Is it true that among thank you, Madam Chair, this is something that hits pretty recent, just on the amount of suicide rates that have happened in just the last 5 years of students of mine and former students that lack these services, of social work, of counselors in our schools, where we end up becoming the social workers without signing up for the job. But I wanted to get the numbers to see if it was among adolescents and young adults between the ages of 15 and 24. Is this right, that Minnesota has a higher suicide rate at 15.5 per 100,000 than the national rate of 14.5 per 100,000? And I just want to know if that's factual, that the suicide rate for Minnesota youth has been higher than the United States average.
Representative Perez Vega, I'm going to see, I don't know if Tara Cliff, that's still online, our school nurse, has any data for us. Otherwise, we'll have to get back to you. Ms. Cliff, do you want to go ahead?
I don't have the specific data on suicide rates at this time. I know that, speaking from the nursing perspective, the state doesn't collect any health-related data for health conditions.
Representative Perez Vega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. But you are aware that we are one of the top in the nation that deals with suicide rates of our youth.
Ms. Cole? Ms. Cliff, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we always are struggling with our students. I don't have the data in front of me, unfortunately, but yes, it is definitely a real concern that, our counselors and social workers could speak to as well, that we are dealing with on a daily basis.
Representative Perez Vega, follow-up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it'd be great, I'm not expecting to have those numbers right now, but if we can get those for our committee, the disparities amongst our BIPOC youth throughout the state that are dealing with those mental challenges.
Representative Perez Vega, you bring up a very good point too, and I'll have our committee administrator also resend the Minnesota Student Survey from that the results just came out December of 2022, and a lot of some of the questions focus around where our students are feeling with their mental health needs too. So we'll make sure we send that out.
Thank you.
Representative West.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Berg, for bringing this bill. This is incredibly important, especially for my area. Blaine High School had 6 suicides in a single year. It's just insane. I mean, before that, Anoka County had like 12 suicides in the entire county over 4 years for teenagers. So this is an incredibly important issue. As for my question, I see it that both charter schools and regular schools are included in this, which I appreciate. They're included at the same value. Why there's a minimum difference? If you could explain the reasoning for that.
Thank you, Representative West. And just to remember, folks, that our traditional public schools and charter schools are all public schools. But Representative Berg.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative West. I'm not sure about the answer on that. I had Mr. Strom give me some facts. Yeah, I might have to get back to you on that one. I didn't anticipate that question unless Ms. Para has an answer.
Ms. Para.
Madam Chair, members, they both get $100 per adjusted pupil units. Are you referring to the $50,000 minimum? That's generally going to help the smaller districts that might not have that many pupil units. I'm not sure why the charters don't have that minimum.
Representative West, follow-up?
Well, thank you for looking into that. It wouldn't be bad to treat them the same as the chair points out. They're both public schools, but I mean, I'm not trying to get you or anything. It's just a real question. Thanks.
Thank you. Representative Sensimura.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Berg, for bringing this incredibly important bill. And thank you, Representative West, for sharing about your district. I did not know about that really horrific figure in Blaine, and so I'm so sorry to hear about that. And I think it just speaks to the need that we're seeing all over the state. My question was around the amendment and kind of the addition of the student support personnel workforce pipeline. I'm wondering if you can give a little bit more detail about what that grant program will look like. And I'm also wondering if we are also going to need to hear this bill then in the workforce committee. But I thank you for adding that amendment. I think in the same way that we know that our teaching force is not reflective of our students, we know that for our mental health providers. So I think that that's a really important addition. But yeah, if you can give more details, and also, do we see this bill going before the workforce committee? Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Berg.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Sensimura, for the question. In terms of whether it will go before workforce, I'm not entirely sure. I was told that it would be laid over. So we may need to determine whether that's a stop that it needs to take. And an answer for your workforce question, I'm wondering if Daniel would like to come up and speak to that.
Yes, please come up, state your name for the record. We always appreciate phone a friend. So state your name for the record and proceed.
Hi, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to the members of the committee. My name is Dan Knewitz. I am the chair of the Minnesota School Psychologists Association for the Legislative Committee. And so the question was to the grant program within the workforce. Yes. So we know, as Dr. Woodward testified to, that the workforce pipeline right now is not producing enough school psychologists to address the shortages. So it's not just a matter of open positions. And so when we look at the cost and attracting candidates and the capacity of our current training programs, of which I know she had mentioned there are 3, we need to make sure that we're taking on more students basically into those programs. And so grants that look at the cost of education, and not only just the cost of education in graduate programs, but the practical experience that they're performing in schools, and also their internship. All of those things need to be taken into account as far as what would make Minnesota a place where potential school psychologists would pursue their graduate education and then enter a workforce, because I know there's also a condition that says they would then serve in Minnesota schools for at least 1 year following their graduate education. So I'm hoping that at least in part addresses your question. Any follow-up?
Representative Sensimura.
Yeah, I think my follow-up is just more of a comment. You know, I think diversifying our workforce is a big issue in a lot of sectors, but I wonder, you know, we've talked a lot about diversifying the teacher workforce, and I think some of the same lessons that we've learned from that work, I think could be applied here, you know, so I think it'd be worth kind of looking into and thinking about what a grow your own program for this would look like. In the same way, we know that there's a lot of paras and ESPs in our classroom who could become teachers. I think the same thing is true for school social workers or school psychologists. You know, I think Representative Perez-Vega was speaking to this, a lot of people who are working with our youth are already kind of learning those skills hands-on or come to the work with those mental health support skills. And so I think that could be an interesting pathway to look at. Thank you.
Mr. Knewitz, did you have follow-up?
I think that is certainly worth entertaining. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. And I think we'll take this conversation out of committee and figure out where to go with that. But I appreciate the question and the comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, Representative Berg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Berg. I would echo the comments from my colleagues across the aisle about, and Representative West. This is a significant need in schools right now. And even prior to the pandemic, this was a significant need for our kids on a day-to-day basis. So I want to applaud you on the amendment. I really appreciate the workforce and the pipeline. That was one of the questions I was going to have. So thank you for that, because just when over the last few years, I've had to hire social workers, counselors, and our applicant pool is greatly diminished. So, so thank you for that. On the flip side of that, once you hire someone, the evaluation process to help grow and develop that person as a professional is equally as important. So Representative Berg, and I didn't see that unless I missed it in there, anything about evaluation or professional development, I would assume that that would still fall under the current model that it currently is. That's not addressed in this bill at all, right?
Representative Berg.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Berg. My assumption is the same as yours, and if we need to find further verification, I can do that and get back to you.
Representative Berg, follow-up?
That's it, thank you.
Great. Representative Knudsen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members, and thank you, Representative Berg, for bringing this up. In my previous life, I was a social worker. I was also an alcohol and drug counselor. Then I worked at a juvenile detention center for adolescent girls. That was 20 years ago, and things have really changed, but it was bad then. It's really bad now. And as I go out and talk to my districts and hear their top concerns, it's the mental health of our kids right now. And there's so many factors, there's so many reasons why, but it's a huge priority. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I really do support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Members, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you, Representative Berg, for the bill. Oh, sorry. Oh, last words what? Last words on the bill. Yes, last words on your bill. I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. You know, every one of us in this room gets asked the question at some point, why did you run? What possibly possessed you to run for office? And this story about my youngest son is one of the biggest reasons that I ran. And so those of you that have shared your experiences in your own communities today, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Representative Berg. Oh, further? Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, that was just my off the cuff. We know that children can't learn on an empty stomach, and we also know that they cannot learn while struggling with the effects of unaddressed and ongoing trauma. Our kids have always brought unseen trauma with them to their classrooms. The intersectionality of this bill and the bills we have heard the last few hearings is stark. Why are students acting out and being suspended or expelled? Why are our students missing recess, a time to get fresh air and move their bodies, as a punitive measure? What happens when our Black, Brown, and Indigenous students don't see teachers or other trusted adults that look like them at the front of the classroom? The answers are any number of complex issues that our students are dealing with every day. What we have heard today shows the ever-increasing need for what this bill will do. I know that prioritizing our students' mental health and ensuring that our student support personnel have the resources that they need is a shared value on both sides of the aisle. In ed policy the other day, Lead Bennett asked about boots on the ground in our schools, school counselors, school psychologists, school social workers, school nurses. They're right here in this bill, and I'm so grateful that she asked that question, and I look forward to her support for this bill today. I'd like to also thank everyone who worked on this bill with me. We had a little coalition with Caitlin and Daniel and other school counselors and psychologists and social workers to get this bill where we wanted it to be today. Madam Chair, members of this committee, this bill is exactly what our students need. This is what they and their families have been asking us for. For most, if not all of us, there is no resource that we won't fight for and no length we won't go to ensure our kids have everything they need to be healthy, to feel and be safe, and to thrive. This is one crucial way that we wrap our arms around all of our kids that make up the vibrant and beautiful fabric of our communities. This is the very best of who we are as parents, family members, neighbors, legislators, and humans. Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Thank you, Representative Berg. And with that, I'll renew the motion to lay aboard House File 8 as amended for future education bill. Members, tomorrow we have a few bills coming up that we'll be voting on out of committee. And then also, there's a correction to our Tuesday, February 7th evening hearing. It will be starting at 7 o'clock, so we can accommodate caucuses. With that, we are adjourned.